All right, so thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you to Tom and Nick for joining us. For those that don't know Tom and Nick, they're OTs who specialise in car modifications, and they've agreed to join us today to give us an update on what's the latest in car mods. So keeping in mind that this is a session we're running as a PD for our peer support volunteers to give you, broaden your understanding of what's available so that you, when you're talking to people with more recent injuries, you can give them a bit of an idea what's going on in the world of car mods, maybe point them in the right direction. You don't have to have all the answers, but we just thought it would be a great way to sort of broaden your knowledge. So I think that's enough from me. Thanks to Tom and Nick, and we'll hand over to you, and even maybe swap. No, you're probably better there. They can see you.
Yeah, I think we're visible.
All right.
I think too, if people have got questions, ask them as we're going. Yeah.
Yep. Great.
So I guess best place to start is probably the list of questions which we got sent through, just as a jumping off point.
Yep.
So the first question which we had asked was, what are the ideal vehicles to modify? And that's kind of a curly question because it very much depends on what the person wants to do. You know, if someone's looking for something that they can, like high level para, someone who's fairly mobile, they're looking for something they can jump in and get down to the shops. The vehicle that will allow that is going to be very different to someone who might be in a powered chair living rurally who needs to be traveling several hours at a time to get to absolutely anything. In terms of vehicles that are, I guess, pretty good all-rounders, there's always your Volkswagen multivan.
Which is pretty much the vehicle of choice for major modifications, and Kia Carnivals.
Yeah.
And starting now, there's a few companies doing the Starias, Hyundai Starias.
Okay. Primarily for passenger setups, not so much for driving yet, but that's what will happen in the near future.
Yeah, so at the moment, I know Automobility, I think Freedom Motors do them.
Yeah.
Automobility have just finished a front left passenger access one, so that's almost ready for people to look at and try. But yeah, there's a few people using the Starias. And what was that thing you saw this morning? It was a
Kia Seltos.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah, smaller thing.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount of space. Only has the first row position for the driver and passenger. Wheelchair user does need to travel in the second row. But if you're after something that's very compact, rear entry only.
For someone who's not that big.
Yeah. So my client today was very short in their wheelchair.
Yep.
And for them, it's a good fit, but it probably wouldn't be for someone who's quite tall or who, has a larger chair. So, it's quite difficult to say what are the best vehicles for someone in a wheelchair, just because it can vary so much.
I suppose with each client,
Yeah.
it's whatever they actually need to what their purpose is.
That's exactly it.
Our job can be made quite difficult if people have jumped on the net and gone and bought a car and then say, oh, we need to get this modified. And we go, well, maybe not the best car for the job.
Yeah.
So if you can discourage people from maybe rushing and grabbing a car or a vehicle too early without at least talking to some people.
Because it really is a minefield. I mean, even if you think, okay, I need a Volkswagen multivan, I'm going to go buy one of those. The difference between a 2019 multivan and a 2023 one could be the difference between what will work and what will not work for a particular person.
So if for example, you need a side entry for your particular person, and the person's more than 1400 tall, and you need a super deep cut, anything with AdBlue, anything after
which is
2019 on, won't work. No, you can't cut them that deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've just had a van modified with it's got AdBlue.
Yeah.
and I think they had to reduce the tank size or something like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, AdBlue and the advent of electric vehicles is going to be quite problematic.
Yeah,
a lot of clients say, well, can we get an electric car and modify that, or an electric van? At this point in time, there's nothing on the market that will, because predominantly these vehicles have got the batteries in the floor.
It's a skateboard. It's all of the running gear, the motors, everything is all in the base. But if you want to then lower the floor, you can't touch that. And even working on it creates significant issues for the workshops that want to do it, because you can't just go, oh, take my pliers and start removing bits, because it's high voltage. It will. And
the protocols say, you know, you must pull the complete battery pack out. It must be stored with this much space around it. There's a lot of difficulties. So I've been asked the question more recently by people that are thinking about the environment. Oh, I'd like an electric van. Yeah. Not so easy at this point.
For wheelchair access, we're not quite there yet. If someone is able to get into a conventional car and they can transfer, then there may be some options, again, depending on their shape. You know, you imagine Tom in a wheelchair versus myself in a wheelchair.
Without being rude.
No, but we're different shapes.
Yeah, we are. And I've got little T-Rex arms. I've got no lift.
Yeah, whereas my arms are quite a bit longer. So, you know, more options.
Yeah.
When you spoke about, sorry, you know, you mentioned about not rushing out to get a car. Can you touch on briefly, so TAC would contribute to some of the funds for differences? Does NDIS do the same? Or
NDIS at this point in time do not contribute to the base vehicle. I think from an ethical perspective, they should.
There have been situations where AAT have directed NDIS to contribute, but that was, you know, based on a very specific case around one individual's disability-related need for a particular vehicle, and it's not really something that we can just point at and say, hey, you need to buy this person a car now.
But the reality is, someone who needs a vehicle, I'd say a multivan, now they're about $75,000 plus pre-injury, they would have been quite happy in a $15,000 car. There's this huge shortfall that is directly attributable to their disability, but the NDIS don't touch it. TAC do definitely contribute to the difference between what a person has had, or their trade-in value, whatever it may be, and what they reasonably require. Work cover Victoria, the same. New South Wales, is anybody? No. Dave, you're in Queensland. I'm not quite sure what the regs are up there. Dave's.
I'm Victoria. I'm under TAC, so even though I'm in Queensland, I still come under the Victorian legislation.
Yeah, no, I just wondered about the Victorian, whether you see people that come from different states from time to time. So yeah, I'm not sure about, I know New South Wales, their equivalent of TAC, don't contribute to the base vehicle. Yeah,
what do you mean by the contribute towards the base vehicle?
Sorry, your base vehicle, your multivan's $70,000. If you need to lower the floor and modify it, there's another ballpark $100,000. They'll pay for the lowering of the floor, but they won't pay for the 80 grand for the base vehicle, for the vehicle, the unmodified car.
Which can create an awkward situation if someone doesn't have a spare $80,000 sitting around to purchase the car that they then need. You could justify the modifications, but that doesn't mean that the person can suddenly afford to buy the car to get it modified.
Is that only a recent thing with the TAC?
NDIS.
No, TAC have always had obligation to assist with the base vehicle. It's NDIS don't, but now there's a lot of people covered by NDIS who are looking to get vehicles, and then they're confronted with this huge fiscal shortfall. But then there's possibilities to look at already modified second-hand vehicles if you can find them.
And
so
I think suits.
That's a really important thing for you as mentors or peer support volunteers to keep in mind, that you don't create a false expectation in people. So that particularly if they're on NDIS, it sounds like they may be looking at funding the original vehicle before the mods. So, you know, then it might be, well, be aware of this, think about second-hand vehicles, that sort of thing.
Is there any situation that you've come across where a particular client has transitioned from TAC to NDIS, or vice versa? I mean, it wouldn't be vice versa because TAC is only vehicle.
If you had an NDIS participant who was involved in a transport accident and sustained further injuries, you could transition that way. But generally,
or there'd be a split of responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. But generally, if someone's under TAC, they're under TAC for the duration of the time that those injuries are affecting them.
So some people who are covered by TAC have entered the NDIS scheme as well to get bits that are a shortfall within the TAC system covered. But for vehicle stuff, if you've got the choice of dealing with TAC or NDS, I'd be dealing with TAC any day.
Yeah. The only reason why I was asking is that with TAC, slightly different in the way that they manage your life, in the fact that if you are a TAC person and you've had an accident, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody's got different information about this, and that is that they don't see it from a holistic point of view, that the quality of life is slightly different in how the NDIS work.
Yeah, which is where that scope for someone to get assistance from NDIS for stuff that TAC don't cover. Yeah, but
they should cover it. You see, create the right narrative. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really why it's important to get an OT involved at the earliest stage possible. Yeah. Because it may be that you need to just have the correct storyline or the correct language to explain to them why they need to be contributing towards a particular thing.
And are there various, I use the word pathways that are documented to find the best route for people or not?
It's pretty much the same pathway. If you go in trying to apply for funding through NDIS or through TAC, there's one path to requesting that stuff from those bodies.
Yeah, OT.
Yep, OT reports, trials of stuff.
Thorough documentation,
yes.
Attributing any necessary modifications directly to the person's disability-related needs. Yeah.
Sorry to hog all the questions, but I use a sports chair. So not only do I need a vehicle to transport myself, but I need auxiliary storage for other mobile devices. Are there any specific things that people need to say, like if I wanted to go to, presently I've got a station wagon and a hoist on top of my car, right? And you've got a station wagon that's quite long, so I can actually put my sports chair into the boot. Are there situations where you've got a vehicle that's got a side entry, and so that you can drive from your wheelchair, as well as have the capability of putting auxiliary equipment in the boot or getting it actually into the vehicle?
So that's very much doable. It would again depend on who's funding the operation as to like what order you ask for stuff in, but any NDIS application is going to need to address transport of the full range of mobility devices that any person might have.
And similarly with TAC and other insurers. And there's a broad range of cranes, depending on the type of equipment you're trying to carry.
The weight of it and all of that stuff. But you can definitely get a van set up with, the entry stuff that you need, means of securing your primary mobility device. If you're then transferring into the driver's seat, setting that up, and then also having a crane for a sports chair or a second device in the boot.
Yeah. The only reason I was asking is, does that mean that as we, when a person originally has their injury, they usually evolve to then playing a sport after they've had the injury, and so that might be, I don't know, to lay down the track to make sure that you've got a vehicle. So
that's where thinking as far ahead as we reasonably can when we're doing that first application. So NDIS, they will expect any vehicle that they fund to last and meet all of that participant's needs for 8 to 10 years.
And TAC expect something
Yes.
similar, unless someone's circumstances change significantly.
It's about the same, but yeah, you need to be considering all of those things during the initial setup so that someone's not finding a situation 3 years down the line where they've taken up wheelchair football and suddenly they're needing to get taxis everywhere because they can't transport the equipment that they need.
Yeah, so those things need to be touched on.
The other thing that NDIS request, which is my question, is that they demand that it's comprehensively insured for the life of the vehicle. And so when I've looked at insurers, many of them will only do up to a certain amount of modification. And the only one that I'm aware of who do it specifically for your modifications is Blue Badge through New South Wales. Are there any others that anyone is aware of?
Unfortunately, the whole insurance, sorry, rudely jump in, but the insurance situations are moving feast. Last year, there was a broker that I was dealing with, and he was able to source through a range of insurers cover for particularly expensive mods. Blue Badge, I think, have got a cap of about 150 grand, which doesn't cover complete. It's 150, isn't it now?
Yeah, something like that. And I told TAC, I think it's even less than that. I told TAC about that, and they're aware, but it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, and at this point, beyond, I know people that have insured through Shannon's, but getting in through the door with Shannon's is difficult unless you're a motoring enthusiast and you can talk the talk, and they will cover more expensive mods.
Yeah.
But they've been good too, in a patchy way. Yeah.
But because the cost of people's mods can vary so hugely, but you go back to the wheelchair accessible van we were talking about, that's a $75,000 vehicle with potentially $130,000 worth of mods.
Plus, if you needed them, another 100 grand's worth of controls.
Exactly. So then you've got $300,000 worth of car. Trying to get that insured anywhere is going to be a challenge. Yeah.
So wouldn't if anything happened with your modifications in a vehicle, motor vehicle accident, wouldn't TAC pay for that?
So if you have a vehicle you're having a coffee somewhere, some crazed rubbish truck driver takes it out completely, and you're covered by TAC, and you've got comprehensive insurance where there's a shortfall, you could reasonably put a case to TAC to cover the shortfall. I don't know how NDIS would respond.
No.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask is, although we require an OT, does that mean you're almost suggesting that we need an advocate that we engage to, besides the OT, to
the OT
understand the language?
The OT, if they're taking the money to do that job, they should be able to take the information and present it in a robust fashion and advocate for the client. That should be part of their role. So there are...
Should be? Or?
Well, unfortunately, with the NDIS appearing, there are a lot of larger companies that employ a lot of baby OTs, and they go out and they think they can do everything, or they get them to do everything. And we've seen a number of vehicle prescriptions where they've said, oh, here's what the person needs. We've done the report. Something is put together. They no longer even work there. They have no ongoing responsibility. So it's about picking some. If you're going to get 200 grand's worth of modifications, I would suggest you get someone, it's not their first run at it.
Yep.
And I think that's difficult to know unless you're in the know.
Yeah.
So being part of AQA and being able to ask around, I think is really beneficial. And I'm quite happy to discuss what we went through in terms of You know, we had all the modifications
We got
all
there in the end.
outlined. I had the car on order, and I get this phone call saying, I'm terribly sorry, but we're denying your request for modifications. Steam coming out of my ears, but I rang Nick and he said, well, give me a minute, I'll have a chat to the bloke, and within 24 hours, the guy understood.
I should flag that that was an outlier in terms of my experience dealing with NDIS. We were able to get someone on the phone. Have a conversation with them.
Should have bought a lottery ticket.
Not only someone on the phone, but someone who was in a position to actually affect some change on the outcome of that decision. So fortunately, common sense prevailed.
Is that a disclaimer what you're giving us now?
Of course.
No, but it's the reality
Yeah,
that it can be a long, protracted series of emails where they'll come back with, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you just got to continue to go through that.
Yeah.
And when you're engaging someone to help you, they need to be prepared to do that.
The initial rejection is not always a no. It's a you need to give them more information and justify
Clarify.
X, Y, and Z.
Make this clearer.
Yep. If you're oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Did you want to say something? No.
No, I think someone's just.
Yeah, I had that problem with mine when I got it through the NDIS. They held me up for 3.5 months because they wanted to know why the chair passenger seat could be moved and the driver's seat replaced. And I just said to the lady, look, you got a partner? And she said, yeah. I said, you go anywhere together? She said, yeah. And I said, well, you do all the driving? She said, no, we share it. Well, there's your answer. She goes, oh, we didn't think of that. The 3 months they held me up with that.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just basic common sense they don't look at.
Well, the reports are often landing on the desk of someone who is just an NDIS worker. They may not have the specialty understanding the particularly when you get to like a really curly application for all sorts of high-end vehicle mods. People don't know what they're looking at. So I think often the pushback that we get from NDIS is just because of that. It's not that they're objecting to the broad goal of a person driving independently. It's that we need to walk them through all of the little decisions and all of the little assumptions which we've made, which underpin the report which we've submitted. And that can sometimes take a bit of time.
And there are a few experienced OTs out there.
There absolutely are.
Who have been through this and are competent and capable. And it's about talking to other folks in chairs or in situations where you need the vehicle who've had good success and getting a bit of a network of providers who've got some runs on the board, I would suggest.
Would you actually, as providers or modifications, would you have a network of OTs that you could recommend?
Apart from themselves.
It's tricky.
Because you're an OT, aren't you?
Yeah, we're both OTs.
We're both OTs.
Yeah.
Which company?
OT Solutions.
That's why they're OT. That's the best.
Yeah.
You need to expand your team.
Yeah.
Work in progress.
Yeah, it's a bit running thin. So
I wish. No.
So I know this is a difficult question to ask, and you'll probably preface it by saying that each of us have individual needs, and specifically you can't say, well, this is what someone's going to require. But are you able to give, because probably they're going to ask us and we're going to say, oh, well, it'll cost you, if you want a van, it'll probably be around about 75,000, and the modification to that will be somewhere between 100 and 200,000, depending on that. And so it gives them some sort of ballpark figure as they're looking, as opposed to, say, a domestic vehicle, say a station wagon or something like that.
It can still vary so hugely. I'd be quite reluctant to suggest that anyone give dollar figures. I think that's more the role of the OT, because depending on their specific requirements, a set of mechanical hand controls is a couple of grand. A set of space drive controls is well over 100. So it's the error bars on any estimate that you give out are going to be enormous to the point where it's almost not useful information to be providing someone.
What are space bars?
Space drive.
What's space?
So we should talk about the range of controls.
So
you.
yeah, well, it actually kind of feeds into one of the questions that we got was, are there any controls that you can use in a rental car? And that is conveniently the one end of the spectrum of controls, which is a set of portable hand controls. You need to have very good function in both of your arms to be able to operate something like that, because it is pushing one way and using your thumb to operate the accelerator and the brake.
And be quite capable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beyond that, to deal with them, because they're not held up. You've got to kind of rest them on your leg and operate.
It's two sticks that you're basically pressing the normal pedals, which are designed to be operated with your legs. So they require an amount of force that most people can put out through their legs. And you're doing that with one wrist. So it's
well, you need to be a puppet controller or something.
No, I've got one myself.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody. But the portable ones that you can put into a rental car. Yeah.
But
is there places where you can see those that to trial it out before you?
No, I transfer mine from our old car into the new car.
But I mean, that might be a mechanical set rather than a portable set.
So a portable set is you can put them in your suitcase, go overseas, clip them on a car, and drive it.
They're only like a couple of sticks like that.
Yeah. So a lot of people buy them online from the States, but in Victoria you can drive with temporary or portable controls. New South Wales, definitely not. I know of people in chairs who've been pulled over driving with portables and they've had to get a tow truck.
Oh.
So just be very careful which state you're in and where you're using them.
So if you got to, let's say, for example, you can use them.
Yeah, as long as you're physically capable of reliably operating them.
And that they are in line with whatever the local
regulations are
in whatever district you're driving.
So just got to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
About suggesting get some portable controls.
You go from coast to coast, for example.
I wouldn't know what all the details are across that. That's really if you're planning to do a driving trip across a foreign country. It's on you to then look up what the relevant legislation is and see whether you.
But there are some portable controls available.
Yes,
and the better ones come from the States.
Yep.
There is some stuff available locally, but I try and keep away from it because of the issues of liability. It's someone's choice to buy them, use them, and it's on them to take responsibility for it.
But those controls are at the very cheap end of a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And the best way to think about it is as you're going from the very cheap controls, they require a great deal of dexterity, strength, and mental attention from the person operating them. As you go up, the amount of strength that might be required or the amount of range of movement that might be required to operate the controls, you can make it work with less.
Yeah.
But the focus is still just as important, because when you're driving with extremely high, like low effort controls, things like a 4-way joystick to control a car, it's now very, very easy to do the wrong thing, because full lock left is no longer that movement, it's this. Full lock right is that. So
that's definitely not for everybody.
No.
So we should talk about the continuum of controls. So historically, there were always the old mechanical push, pull, push, pat controls.
I heard that one.
Yeah. Designed in the early 60s.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with them. They're functional.
Late 80s.
Yeah.
Perfectly functional, but they take a lot of strength out of your shoulder.
Continuous, steady, static load.
With a chain.
Yeah.
Well, there's a range of different mechanical. But now there are a broad range of controls available that are low effort for the accelerator, and they can be coupled with a mechanical brake.
Yeah. So there's all different form factors on your left, on your right, different movements to control the accelerator. Things from an E-radial, which is a nice twisting movement, to what Lynn's driving with, which is a wireless accelerator, which you move your thumb to control the accelerator, and then there's a brake bar. to slow down with.
Someone, but my one used to get stuck or had a like a red thing where it didn't get, you couldn't have it go really slow. It was like a,
yeah, the early ones were,
yeah,
how can I put it nicely, suboptimal.
yeah,
Imprecise.
Yes, I think they're on generation 3 and they're a lot better, but it's not for everyone.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it really is about finding the correct set of controls for what a person can do and for what they need to do. If you're, you know, able to use both arms and you really enjoy driving, you know, twisty roads and all of that stuff, maybe something like an overgreen where you can have both hands on the wheel is where they need to be, because then it's both hands turning, accelerating by bringing your palms in, versus someone who just really wants to potter around. They might be better with an E-radial where they've got one hand steering, other hand doing their accelerating and braking. And that's really our role. Is to
and really the main thing for people to understand is there's a really broad range now. It's not just, it's got to be on the right.
Yeah.
You can be on the left.
There's a really good equivalent to the E-radial, which sits along the transmission tunnel in the car.
It's just
Same
a
movement.
forwards, backwards movement.
Yeah, really good thing.
So there's a broad range, and we can put together a bit of a list for you guys of what's available.
So, I know in the past there was the requirement you're allowed to have accelerator by wire. Is there still a limitation for the braking to be a direct link?
No, the braking can be via, it can be brake by wire, but it has to have competent, reliable redundancies. And then you're getting into the expensive end of the low effort controls.
So probably the best way to kind of split it into the high effort and low effort controls is, can a person manage steering?
Or reduced effort
Or
steering.
reduced effort steering, which is only possible in some cars. Again, asterisks. Power steering, fine. Electric power steering, not so much. Much more difficult. We won't get into that, but if they can manage steering, reduced effort or otherwise, then they're probably in the lower half of the control spectrum. And we just need to then figure out reliable accelerating and braking. Maybe they need a spinner device or something of that sort to be able to get the
Some
wheel
sort
around.
of steering aid.
Yeah. And then they're probably going to be good to go. If they can't manage steering, then we're starting to get to really quite high-end controls, because we need to find an input device they can use that will allow them to reliably control the steering. And that's when we're getting to things like joysticks, where the driver is using a joystick to control an electric motor, which is controlling the steering. So there's that, it's all drive by wire essentially. You're braking, you're accelerating, you're steering.
Yeah.
But you really need to be cautious at that end of the spectrum.
So a good OT, which both you guys are, is that where you define the spectrum and where someone sits within the spectrum with their current capabilities? So can I ask you this question? As we evolve from coming out of hospital and start to drive, which maybe probably in about this couple of years away from after our accident, we will evolve in some way where we change our capabilities, whether it be positive or negative. How does that fit into the whole where you put someone in that spectrum of driving, and is that taken into account? Is the evolution of a person taken into account as to where they fit the spectrum as when they first come and see you?
I mean, if we've done it correctly, someone gets a control arrangement that they can live with, and then they regain additional function, it's going to be easier for them to operate those same controls. It's pretty unlikely that someone would improve to a degree where they are no longer requiring those controls at all. But if that occurred, you could always do another assessment, update license conditions, take controls out if someone has a miraculous recovery and no longer requires something.
What about the oh, sorry. Don't joke here. What about in the other side of the spectrum, where with aging, right? You get the mods, and over time you hurt your shoulder or something happens, it's getting older, and you can't. The modifications aren't suitable anymore. So what's the options there, or the funding bodies, will they relook at that and then?
Yes, that's considered a change of circumstances. Yeah, and we've often had to deal with people where they've had shoulder deterioration, a decreased capacity to transfer, and then it's about approaching the insurers and saying, hey, the circumstances have changed. Here's the person's presentation now. Here is the durable solution moving forward. Yeah.
How good are joystick controls these days?
Depending what sort you use, and I could talk at length about that.
In brief, not all joystick controls are made the same. Things that look like visually the same can have very different electronics and design underpinning them, which may make some things more suitable than others.
And on the subject of design underpinning, the stuff that I'm comfortable using and dealing with has got a massive German company behind it, where they've done extensive destruction testing.
There's three levels of redundant
competent
circuits,
redundancies. You know, they spent, I think,
which you need if you're driving and that's full noise, that's all the brakes.
Yeah.
You need to have that level of redundancy so you don't get some weird computer circuit saying, oh, we want to go really fast now, when you don't.
But
is it Volvo with crash dummies or what?
Well, in answer to Dave's question, they are good, they're drivable at speed, but as Nick mentioned earlier, a small movement equates to a movement of the vehicle. So they still require finesse, to operate.
Yeah, there is amount of dexterity or control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm quite biased, but my view is, if the manufacturer has spent 30 million euros upgrading and developing the system, and they've done independent, thorough destruction testing, and OEM people are prepared to use their equipment, then that's the system that I'm comfortable with. There are other systems that don't have that level of testing that are being presented on the market as equivalent, but they're not. Yeah.
Do they interface, like say, with?
No, absolutely not.
Different arrangements.
Totally different fish.
The electronics are different. The sensors are different.
Yeah, that hasn't got any redundancies in it. There's no way you could use that on a road-going motor vehicle.
Yeah. Whereas the box for a four-way joystick is about yay big, because there's 3 sets of circuitry.
3 lots of wiring.
Yeah.
That all goes through hard wiring.
Yeah. I'm turning left. Okay, we'll go that way.
Yeah.
You get 1 error signal, it throws up a thing, but you've still got 2 good signals saying, yep, we want it to turn left. And when you're at that end where someone has extremely limited function and they need very high-end controls or very low-effort controls to be able to operate a vehicle, you need to be very, very careful how you set someone up.
This chair doesn't go very good in a straight line.
Sorry?
This chair doesn't go very good in a straight line.
Flat out, that's right, yeah.
Also, was that you moving on the road the other day? Question I've got, this is a bit of a future question. Have they got voice-activated vehicle controls? Or
Secondaries
only.
Indicators, wipers, headlights,
climate
washer.
Control.
Yeah.
But not obviously for your primary controls.
You're not going to be yelling turn left or brake.
No,
how much?
I mean,
the reason why I was asking is that how are we going as far as people with impairments and disabilities to be able to manage
automated driving.
It's a long way off.
The other
Yeah.
side of 2030 would be my guess for when all of that stuff starts to come to the forefront.
Just after we get the submarines, is it, or what?
Separate issue.
Yeah. It's
Out of my wheelhouse.
quite some distance away, and people don't want to be sitting in hospital waiting for that to happen,
No.
because it is not 2 years away.
All right, we've got a question from Mario.
Ah, Mario.
All right, just unmute yourself, Mario.
Thanks, Hal. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Is that a question with all this, just from the point of view of, is there any liability for the driver of a hand controlled vehicle, for instance, if there's an accident? Can the other person, legitimately, object that it's the fault of the driver because of a hand control error?
No. If the person has gone through the correct, proper assessment process, VicRoads endorse their license, and there can be no insurance pushback.
Provided they are driving an arrangement which is in line with their license conditions. If you have a condition for must drive with a left foot accelerator, for example, and you jump in someone's unmodified car and drive it,
then you've got a problem.
You're driving a vehicle that does not align with your license conditions. It would be the same as a P-plater jumping in an overly powerful car, or a learner driving a car without supervision.
So then your insurance would be out the window, but there can be no, if the person has a license that's endorsed, they've been tested, they're no different to any other able-bodied driver on the road.
That's pretty clear. Thank you.
Now, I'm conscious of time, and there's a few more questions that Nick's getting through. So maybe we'll let Nick get through the questions, and then we'll save some more questions for the end, if that's okay.
We'll run through the rest of it. We've actually kind of addressed a few of them.
Okay.
So controls that could be used in a hire vehicle, it's pretty much portables. Everything else requires too much setup. It's not practical for a hire vehicle. Push-pull manual controls versus electronic controls. The only situation in which someone, in my mind, should be getting set up with a set of mechanical vehicle controls is if they don't have any funding behind them, they're not NDIS, they're not TAC, and they don't have personal funds that they can use, because there are better options available. They're just more expensive. So, your push-back controls
or your push-pull,
they'll do the job.
Yeah.
But they're going to require more effort from the operator and
create longer-term problems with fatigue and shoulder problems.
There's nothing that control can do that you can't get done with an e-radial with less effort required by the driver.
Electronic, radially operated. So it's just a lever, and you just it's just got a small spring in it, a potentiometer that talks to a computer that tells your car how much accelerator to give it.
And brake
is still a
mechanical push.
It's still a mechanical push.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's the avoiding having to hold acceleration
that steady,
against
constant
that tension.
load. Yeah.
That's what messes people up over time.
And what I've actually got, I've got a push brake, and I've actually got what's called a little lever sitting on top, and which I just move with my finger.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, so there's
that's considered an e-radial.
Well, no, that's another electronic accelerator control.
E-radial is that specific movement. There are trigger throttles. There are ones that you pull on. There are things that you twist with your other arm. There's, like I said, all different sorts of form factors, but electronic accelerator input, mechanical brake connection.
So we could probably spend half a day just talking about the different controls.
So in terms of stuff that's available for people with higher level injuries, the higher your level of injury, presumably the less function that you have in whatever limbs you have function in.
You're talking about vertebrae at higher level, is that what you mean?
Yeah, basically. So the more impaired someone is, the lower effort controls they will likely require if driving is even feasible for them. There are definitely situations where someone might want to return to driving, but their functional capacity and the the access to funds that they have may not necessarily align with that. If someone, let's say, lives in just down the road here, they live in Fitzroy, right near everything that they need. They need a space drive set up in a low floor van to be able to drive independently.
300 grand.
$300,000 gets you a lot of taxis. And when you live really close to everything that you need to access, it would be extremely difficult for an OT to make a compelling case that the insurer should pay $300,000 so that this person can do something that they want to do if they don't really need to do it. Maybe you can touch on latest equipment for loading chairs into a car.
Latest equipment for loading chairs into cars. So
Would you like some more water?
I'm doing fine.
So we all know the Waymo roof hoists.
Brilliant if you've got a mid-fold chair.
Yeah, and there are other quite bulky but covered equivalents that you can put on the roof of a car. And there's a couple of other products that will load a manual chair into the back of a car combined with an automatic tailgate, like an Abbey loader, and there is another one now.
A broadability one, I want to say. I might be getting the brands wrong, but some of them are only compatible with mid-fold chairs. Others are compatible with a rigid frame chair. So it really depends on what the person is in. And again, that use case. What do they need to do? Do they need the boot space?
There are some cool automatic loading things, but making them fit and work well and position the chair in the right spot for the person is a bit of a process. So don't just say, oh, you just need a wagon, you'll be right. How big's the person's wheelchair? How far is it from the back of the car to the driving position for them to reach it?
And which station wagon have they bought? Because all the measurements are different.
Yeah, so that's a bit of, you can say there are a number of devices. It is situation, person, wheelchair specific as to what will work.
Can I interrupt?
Please.
Can a rigid go up on the roof?
Yes, it can, but it sits up a fair way.
And you're probably not going to be able to get a cover over it easily. So
it'll either be dusty, wet, hot.
The biggest problem with that, because I've got one of those, and I've got a folding, this is a folding, just goes, is that you can't get into any of the parking areas of any of the shopping centres.
Plus you need room for the thing to swing.
And you need, they talk about a 2.1 metre clearance for my chair.
And then it goes up if you're using a rigid frame.
Another option which may not, sort of fills the same category, would be putting a crane into the back of a ute. So you'd still have the trade-offs of not having a cover over it, of it not necessarily being perfect for every situation. But if you only have access to one car, you need that four-wheel drive functionality and a higher ride height. You can make it work sometimes. Just having a crane that comes round will pick up your wheelchair after you get out of it and into the driver's seat and drop it into the tray for you. But again, different people.
And I've seen one with the canopy come sideways as well.
Yeah.
Bit trickier because then you've got an extra thing that needs to work reliably. You wouldn't want to be driving down the road if your canopy actuators
and again, that's
not working.
Potentially wheelchair specific to a point.
Yes.
Because the cranes that are usually affiliated with those got a limited load rating.
Yeah. Or they might require, particular range of movement, which may not be compatible with the canopy that someone wants. It's going to be a one-off situation if you're setting up something like that.
And there are now, this is slightly different. So for folks who can transfer, there are now turnout seats, and again,
transfer plates
that rise and fall. So someone who's quite a good transferring person with balance and capacity to hang on could maybe get into a higher off the ground vehicle like a dual cab or a four-wheel drive, should that be what they do and need to do.
There needs to be that alignment between what the person can do, what they need to be able to do, and what we can reasonably get funded by accessing whatever they may have entitlements.
What if that last bit doesn't work and what they want versus what they need doesn't match? Can they aim to have what they need paid for and they pay for the difference to get what they want?
As long as what they want actually meets what they need.
Yes. If there is, I want a ramp, let's say passenger only arrangement, they want a powered ramp, but NDIS will only fund a manual ramp. in almost all situations, there is scope for the participant to chip in whatever the difference would be, so they can get that powered ramp rather than being stuck with a manual. But yeah, if you
the solution actually still needs to meet their needs overall.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people want some very odd things,
or things that are perhaps overkill or unnecessary,
or potentially unsuitable,
unsafe. Yeah. Is there a checklist of things people should consider when looking to modify a car? That's really a conversation that needs to happen between the participant and their OT, because
and potentially the modifier.
Yeah.
Because some modifications aren't necessarily compatible with every vehicle.
Yep. And
that's what happened to me actually. I was originally going to get a Mazda 6 station wagon. And what happened was that the OT said, oh yeah, I don't like the Mazda 6 because the door opens up wide enough for me to get my chair up reasonably close and transfer over by slide transfer. And the real trouble is that the modification changed the vehicle's knee bag arrangement, and they weren't prepared to modify or do something in a way that would compromise what they see as the safety of the vehicle, as far as the knee bag compared to the braking lever.
So disarming an airbag requires engineering certification. You can, in some cases, route the controls so that they do not interfere.
So they go over the top of the airbag and the airbag can remain.
But that depends on the type of control you're using, who is installing it, and the layout of the vehicle. It's because there's so many different things to consider. That's really a conversation for the vehicle modifier, the OT, and the person who's trying to set up a car.
So from our point of view, it's better people don't go and buy a car and say, now make this work. It's to have a conversation first, so that they really consider what they're going to be buying.
Because there are implications if every single decision that's made. Someone decides, oh, I've got to be able to cook for myself. I need a standing wheelchair. Fine, brilliant. If that's a major thing that you need to do, that's the bit of equipment that you need. But standing wheelchair, you're not going to be able to drive from that. It's probably going to raise your seated height too high, so you're not going to fit through the door opening.
It's also a very wobbly thing to sit in, by contrast to most powered wheelchairs. So there are a bunch of trade-offs.
Yeah, and it's really important to get the OT involved at the earliest stage possible, so that you're not going to make any decisions which perhaps prevent you from doing other things down the line.
I've had people that want to drive, but their chair just precludes them from actually getting into the driving position, even in a fully modified van, because of the type of chair that they've selected.
The wheels are too wide, you can't get far enough forwards, or it's a front wheel drive thing, so you can't quite position it the way that you need to be able to get in. There's so many different considerations.
What sort of vehicle did you get to get the all-terrain wheelchairs? I'm just getting one.
To carry the all-terrain chair?
Yeah, to carry it.
To carry it, well,
you could put a crane in the boot. You could just pick it up.
As long as there's enough boot space. They're 180, 90 kilos.
There are cranes that will lift, 180 kilos.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, enough to pick up even a Magic Mobility XA.
Yeah.
Those big.
Yeah, they're about 180.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of driving from a chair like that,
no.
That's
when you figure that out.
Yeah.
Jack wants to know. Yeah, but you've got the ultimate compromise there.
Yeah.
You've got a mid-wheel drive, but with some reasonable tyres on it. Yeah.
I'm getting one to get into attics.
Yeah, which a crane loaded into the back of whatever vehicle.
Sand as well.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was going to say, I made a bit different setup. I put a ute crane on my trailer. Last week I went to the truck show, which is a pretty rough paddock.
Yeah.
And I took my X8 in the paddock, in the trailer, drove in this chair, lifted with one chair to the other, wheeled around all day, then lifted me out into this chair so I could drive home and put the X8 in the trailer and goes home.
And, you know, your experience is really valuable to convey to people that you don't have to have the one solution for everything. There's other ways to make it work.
Make it up and it works.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, is there a media platform where we can all deposit information for everybody to see and things like that?
There's the spinal Facebook page and stuff that people put things on and make people aware of. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure everyone's gathered from this conversation that we can give you little bits and pieces of these potential solutions, but the training that we've done is to go through and realize all the little edge cases on each of those solutions, which might make it not suitable. So it's kind of difficult to put out information saying, oh, you've got this disability, you need this
here's
thing,
your solution.
because you might be the wrong shape, you might have the wrong car. So there's potential for people to get the wrong idea and run with something which may not be a viable
with a little bit of information. You go, oh, that's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a person recently who saw some stuff online, had a bit of a chat to a vehicle converter. That's the vehicle we need. Totally unsuitable.
And we've been untangling that for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right, it's 3:30 and I'm conscious that Nick and Tom came early, so
only through our own error.
Oh, that's okay. So you've got time.
Yeah, we're not under pressure.
We usually have a bit of a free for all in the questions at this point, and it could go on for another hour.
Yeah.
But I suppose just for those that have tuned in, this is the best turnout we've had for a PD meeting for a while. So great topic. I think that we've picked this time. As I said at the beginning, this is an opportunity to provide you all as volunteers with some information about the what's happening in the world of car mods, and I think the take-home message is it depends. Don't buy a car until you've spoken to an OT. Have a conversation with your OT and your vehicle modifier. But you know, obviously there are solutions out there. Just need to be patient and considerate of a number of variables. So officially, I'd like to thank Tom and Nick for making time and coming out. and Copper. Maybe we just open the floor to questions, and we'll keep recording the questions because there might be some juicy bits of information in that as well. So happy to go with that.
Yep.
Great. I'll try and keep an eye on the screen, and I see, Dave, you've got your hand up, so we'll kick off with you. We'll try and get a balance between the room and on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Tom and Nick. Great to hear you talk about this very interesting area. I know there's a lot of different options, but a question I was wondering is, what is the what is the most disabled person that's actually driven at the highest level of injury, I guess?
That's a very difficult question, Dave.
Yeah.
Because if you look at someone with your level of injury and how you drive, there's other people with your level of injury with maybe different arm lengths and abilities that couldn't drive. Yeah. So it really varies.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking, well, you got someone who has a joystick control, that sort of thing. So you're looking at someone who's got fairly limited movement. I guess it's just as a bit of a, I know it's how long is a piece of string, but I suppose just a bit of an idea of, that's all I was more after. That's all.
Yeah, so
the best way to probably think about it is the more impaired an individual is, the more of an outlier they might need to be to make, you know, an arrangement work.
So just being able to operate a joystick on a wheelchair doesn't immediately qualify you to drive a joystick in a car.
Right, okay, yeah.
If that helps, because you have to consider the person's stability, because if they're doing this when they're driving and the joystick only needs to move a few mil to significantly change direction, that's not ideal.
Yeah. No worries. I was wondering if, that's fine. Good.
So we're not going to put numbers on it.
No. It's just more about context, I guess. When if someone says, I always thought someone says, "Oh, I want to drive." It's like, well, is there? I know it's. You don't want to give people false hope, and you don't want to say things which might, obviously give them false hope. But it's sort of like, well, if you say, well, someone with like C5, textbook C5, yes, they can drive. Not, there's lots of variations, or someone with type thing. That's, I guess that's what I'm probably looking at. But I know it's how long's a piece of string, and as we know, every disability is different. Two people with C5, C6, totally different.
Yeah, and if people have got significant unwanted spasms, and they're trying to drive with a four-way joystick, it's not great.
No, that's right.
In fact, it's actually excludes them.
Yeah.
Someone's disability might be within a range where driving is feasible, but they may have some particular nuance to their, pre-existing injury or whatever it might be, which might just be the red flag, which means it's not really going to work.
But it might be better to say to a person, it may be possible you will need to go through an assessment process to establish whether you can consistently, reliably, in all situations, maintain control of the vehicle. And rather than trying to decide or work it out, to say it may be.
It's not about deciding. I guess. No. Some people say, examples type thing, but it's very complex area.
So I know I asked this question before, but is there any place where you can see the full gambit of alternatives that are available, or is there a custodian place that gives links to all that is available? Does anybody do anything like that?
Not really. There's a range of different modifiers that supply a range of products. And it's about knowing the different converters, what they have to offer,
which ones represent which brands, what is available within each of those brands, and who that might be suitable for.
So this was a problem for us, and we'd be reliant on a converter might have this, a converter might have that. So that's why we bought some vehicles and put a broad range of controls in. So when we're assessing someone, we don't have to rely on Fred, the driving instructor that's got these controls. We've got the whole lot. We've got left-sided, right-sided, a range of stuff so people can explore what actually works.
Just wanted to add to that, I was thinking about it's only in one place, ATSA is on there.
True. That's a very valid point. ATSA is.
It's on in May this year.
May, and it's Melbourne? It's Melbourne this year,
That's what I showed you. No, you might be right.
No, May. It is definitely May.
May.
No, it is definitely May. But in terms of a central place, get people to go to ATSA. Good point. Because then you will see the range of what's available. But again, not all of the similar looking products are the same. But it's a starting point.
I think we have another question.
Question over there from
Wade.
Yes. Thanks, Nick and Tom. You mentioned that there's different range of hand control that you have. Is it possible for us to try it out, or in the car, or do we need to just have a look at it?
Depends on what you're trying to achieve. Would you be looking to set up a vehicle for yourself, or are you just interested in seeing the range of controls that are available?
Well, I guess I'm using the push and the basic one at the moment. And if I need to change to a good one, a better one for the shoulders and everything, how can I find out which one to use? So I may want to look at the different range so I can try it out.
Yeah, well, that's what we do as part of an initial assessment. We would come out and meet. We would discuss what your needs are, and then there would be an opportunity to get into one of our vehicles if we think there's a good solution there, to try something out and make sure that you are happy with it before you then go applying to a funding body or getting quotes to have that installed through a car.
Oh, okay. So you have a car actually for us to try it out.
At the moment, there are 3.
Yeah. So we've got a van that you can roll a wheelchair into and try a range of controls.
A Volkswagen Golf, which does require transfers, but which has about 10 different sets of controls that we can plug into it.
And
I guess there's space drive van.
There's a space drive van, but to get into that and try that,
that's a whole thing.
It's a whole separate thing. Yeah. But in terms of general vehicle controls, yes. And there's just trying to think who else has got what. I don't know what other companies have got, but I can only talk about what we've got.
There are definitely other driving instructors who have some form of hand controls, and if what you're after is something fairly conventional, you may be able to get just a driving lesson with someone to try something out.
Yeah.
Right. So is your company providing driving lessons as well?
Yep. So we have a driving instructor who's not here today as well.
And Tom and I are both trained as driving instructors as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
The fear I have is that I'm insured and everything, and if something smashes into my car on a minute, I'm actually stuck, right? Because my wheelchair's on top, and it may come off or something like that. And so the fear I have is that they'll be able to get me out of the vehicle, something like that, but I can't be immobilised till my car gets fixed. So do you accommodate those situations if we say, oh, look, the insurance company will say, well, okay,
absolutely not.
THC will provide.
It's back to taxis, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
No.
We don't have rental car facility.
Yeah, it's just
a nightmare.
It's not feasible. We did look into it briefly.
Yeah.
It's not something that
you need to even get insurance for rental cars or rental vehicles. You've got to have a fleet of, I think, more than 15 vehicles, and it's still prohibitive.
If you then
from an insurance perspective,
15 vehicles, set them all up so that anyone can drive them.
Yeah, impossible.
Yeah,
that costs you a fortune.
Yeah.
One thing which I will quickly bring up, which was on our list of questions, was around second-hand vehicles and Japanese imports.
Japanese imports. We must touch on those.
They are out there. They do exist. They are okay in some situations, but they are not the amazing deals that they may appear to be if you just do a cost comparison between a Toyota Voxy or a Alphard or whatever it might be to a specifically set up Volkswagen multivan.
So be aware that with the Japanese import specifically, there was a legislative change late 2019 where the Road Vehicle Standards Act, we now have to have any of those Japanese imported cars compliant with the Australian standards. They were not prior to that. The salespeople would import them and say, hey, Nissan made it, it must be right. Untrue. Had a client who, elderly mother, bought a Japanese import, tied down her disabled daughter in her powered chair, had an almighty crash. The powered wheelchair came tumbling through the car because the restraints broke. So again, beware the Japanese import. Ensure it is compliant with Australian standards, and be aware that any of the disability stuff, there are none spare parts.
Even aside from the disability stuff,
if
you take panel damage, you hit a wombat, that can write your car off just because you won't be able to get a new front end to replace the bits that are broken because it wasn't offered here in Australia. Now, if you are fluent in Japanese, you love importing stuff from overseas off Yahoo Japan, and you are also an auto mechanic, maybe it's a good fit for you, but that is not the majority of people.
Yeah.
So it's an option. It is not the right option for most people.
They're not quite as they're painted.
No.
So those are the aircon. I've been trying to.
No,
I think we're leaving now. Can you turn back on again?
We were cooking up there for a while.
Sorry, I was sweltering.
Yeah.
All right, how's it going? Mario, you've got your hand up.
muted. You're muted, Mario.
He's just trying to.
Oh, he's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on it.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I've lost control. It's like being in a repressive regime because Sal turns my mic off, but doesn't bother to turn it back on again when I want to talk.
Oh, Sal.
I was going to put my hand up just to say bye because I got a nick off. I've just got a quick question for a friend. It's for a friend with long hair. He wanted to know, is there any possibility to blame your hand controls for when you get a speeding ticket?
Good luck.
Let us know how
See you
that
guys. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I've got one
from
talked
the floor?
about the 4x4 electric wheelchair, and you can get a crane. That including an abilator, because
No.
abilator.
Abilator is just for really a rigid
Yeah,
frame
okay.
manual chair.
There is a heavy duty
Yeah.
Abbey loader
But
that
even
can
then-
handle e-motion wheels
Oh, okay.
on but that's about it. I think it's
Yeah.
30, I can't remember, 30 or 35 kegs
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause
max.
It's
Yeah,
an
right.
arm that's reaching out around, and then the
Yeah.
length of the vehicle. It's only a bit of tube aluminium at that
Yeah.
length. You're not going to be able to lift
Yeah,
180 kilos
Yeah,
at a distance of 4 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
would be nice. But
So there'd be
Yeah,
a different
if-
solution if you need to
because-
transport one.
It came up before, but I wasn't sure if you.
so the crane we were talking about wasn't.
Yeah.
It's actually a commercial hydraulic crane.
Well,
Yeah, with a remote control.
okay.
Yeah, onto the back of the ute.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the viewing audience? Any more from the floor? Great. Well, thank you, Tom and Nick. That's been a fantastic session. I think obviously a lot of people engaged and interested, so very helpful. Look forward to you. I think you said you might send out a list of the range of controls that people can consider.
And it won't be. It's a moving feast.
Yeah. And again, reiterating the answer that's probably most common and should be given is it depends. And we won't hold Tom and Nick to anything they've said today because it'll change in a few months, no doubt.
In a heartbeat, actually.
So yeah, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks.
Do you want to say anything now?
See you, Dave.
No, I just want to thank you, Sal, Tom, and Nick for coming, and everyone else. It's been a great turnout, like you said, and good to see all these people online as well.
Yeah,
And
we've got.
Tom's going to be back, he said, so great.
All right.
Yep, we're happy to come back.
Great. Great.
One thing I'd like to say that it gives me peace of mind to know there's guys like you out there that are making life a bit better for us. So thank you to both of you. It's peace of mind to know how tense it must be for a lot of us, and we see not knowing where to turn, but you have just given me peace of mind to know that you guys are there, that can help us. Thank you.
Bring him anytime, you'll be in Surface Paradise or Queensland.
And stay tuned for our next PD too. We've got a list of topics coming up which escape my memory at the moment, but we'll notify about the next one in a month or less.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, guys.